The emergency beacon pierced through the static of deep space communications like a scream in the night. Dr. Sarah Chan jerked awake in her cramped quarters aboard Research Station Kepler-7, her heart hammering against her ribs. The red warning lights bathed everything in an ominous glow as she stumbled toward the command console. "This is Dr. Chun responding to emergency signal," she transmitted, her voice thick with sleep and confusion. The response came immediately, but it wasn't in any Earth language. The translator module struggled for several seconds before producing words that made Sarah's blood freeze. "Please, human doctor, my baby won't wake up. She sleeps but doesn't sleep. Please save her." The voice belonged to something decidedly non-human. The vocal patterns were wrong, too melodic yet too sharp, like wind chimes made of broken glass. Sarah's hands flew across the control panel, isolating the signal and running it through advanced linguistic analysis. "I'm receiving your transmission," Sarah said carefully. "Can you tell me your species and location?" "I am HFY of the Veltar. My ship coordinates follow this message. Please, human doctor, you study our kind. You wrote the papers about our biology. My daughter, she is dying and I cannot reach her mind." Sarah's chest tightened. The Veltar were one of only 3 alien species that had made peaceful contact with humanity. She had indeed spent the last 5 years studying their unique physiology and psychology. They were a telepathic race, communicating as much through mental connection as through spoken word. For a Veltar parent to be unable to reach their child's mind was like a human parent being unable to hear their baby cry. "ZARTHYSS, I'm tracking your position. You're only 6 hours away at maximum thrust. I'm coming to you." "No, you must not. The radiation field around my ship, it will kill you. I must bring her to you, but the journey, I fear she will not survive the movement through space." Sarah was already pulling up everything she knew about Veltar physiology on her secondary screens. Their young were incredibly fragile during their first solar cycle of life, requiring constant mental connection with their parents to maintain basic life functions. If the child was unconscious, truly unconscious in the human sense, she might indeed die during transport. "ZARTHYSS, can you describe your daughter's condition in detail?" "She breathes, but barely. Her heart's beat, but slow, too slow. Her mind, it is like looking into a deep cave. I call to her, but there is no echo. She fell into the state 3 rotations ago, just after we passed through the Aurora Fields near your star system." The Aurora Fields. Sarah knew them well, a region of space where solar radiation created spectacular light displays visible from several star systems. But radiation exposure could be devastating to developing Veltar neural systems. "I need to prepare specialized equipment," Sarah said, her mind racing through possibilities. "Bring her to the station's medical bay. I'll configure a protective environment that should minimize the risk during docking." "You would do this? Risk yourself for a child not of your species?" The question caught Sarah off guard. In her years of research, she had developed a deep respect for the Veltar, but this was different. This was personal. Any parent would do the same, she heard herself say. Sarah spent the next 4 hours converting her medical bay into something resembling a Veltar nursery environment. She adjusted atmospheric composition, lighting spectrums, and electromagnetic fields based on her research data. She had never attempted to treat a living Veltar before. Her studies had been limited to biological samples and scanner readings. When the sleek, organic curves of the Veltar ship finally docked with her station, Sarah felt her breath catch. Through the airlock's viewing port, she could see ZARTHYSS clearly for the first time. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a shifting pattern of blues and purples that seemed to flow like water. Her large, multifaceted eyes held an expression of desperate hope that needed no translation. In her arms, wrapped in what looked like living fabric, was the smallest Veltar Sarah had ever seen. The infant was no larger than a human newborn, her skin pale and flickering between colors weakly. Sarah could see the tiny chest rising and falling with labored breaths. "She is beautiful," Sarah whispered as the airlock cycled through its sequence. "Her name is Lyra S., ZARTHYSS said, her voice breaking. She was so bright, so curious. She would reach for my thoughts like human babies reach for bright objects. Now there is only silence. As Sarah led them into the prepared medical bay, she couldn't help but notice how Zartikas moved with the careful desperation of any mother carrying a sick child. The universal nature of that protective posture struck her deeply. "Lay her here," Sarah indicated the modified examination table. "I need to run some basic scans first." As the alien mother gently placed her daughter on the table, Sarah saw tears, actual tears, flowing down Zartikas' face. They glowed faintly blue in the dim lighting. "Please," Zartikas whispered. "She is all I have left." Part 2. The scanner readings made no sense. Sarah stared at the holographic displays surrounding little Lyris, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The child's vital signs were stable but wrong, like a song played in the correct key but at half tempo. "Her neural activity is unlike anything in my database," Sarah muttered, adjusting the scanner's sensitivity. "It's not that her brain isn't working. It's working, but in a completely different pattern." Zartikas hovered nearby, her skin shifting through anxious purples and grays. "In our language, we have a word, Kethera. It means a mind that has traveled too far from its body and cannot find the way home." Sarah looked up from her instruments. "You think her consciousness is somehow displaced?" "When we passed through the Aurora fields, there was a moment, a flash of energy unlike anything I had experienced." Lyris cried out, not with her voice, but with her mind. "The sound of it." Zartikas' voice trailed off, her large eyes reflecting pain. It was like hearing her soul being torn away. The medical scanner beeped, drawing Sarah's attention to a new reading. Deep within Lyris's brain tissue, there were microscopic crystalline structures that shouldn't exist in any biological organism. They pulsed with a faint energy signature that matched the electromagnetic frequencies she had recorded from the Aurora fields. HFY, these crystal formations in her neural tissue, are they normal for your species? No. We are born with small neural crystals, but they develop slowly over many cycles. These look different, too complex, too organized. Sarah enhanced the image, her heart racing as the implications became clear. They're not just complex, they're technological. These aren't biological crystals, they're some kind of artificial neural network. The revelation hit them both simultaneously. Something in the Aurora fields hadn't just injured Lyris, it had infected her with alien technology. "Can you remove them?" Zartikas asked, her voice tight with fear. "I don't know. They're integrated into her neural pathways. Removing them might kill her, but leaving them..." Sarah paused, studying the data. "Wait, look at this energy pattern. The crystals aren't random. They're forming a specific configuration." Sarah pulled up her long-range sensor data from the Aurora fields. The energy signatures matched perfectly. Whatever had created those crystals was still out there, still active. "Zartichwesis, I need to ask you something difficult. Before Lyris fell unconscious, did she exhibit any unusual behaviors? Any abilities she hadn't shown before?" The alien mother's skin rippled with conflicting colors. She began responding to my thoughts before I formed them. And once, when I was in distress, she calmed me by showing me images in my mind, images of places I had never been, things I had never seen. She was accessing memories that weren't yours. How is that possible? Sarah's mind raced through the implications. What if the Aurora fields aren't just a natural phenomenon? What if they're some kind of storage system? A repository of consciousness from multiple species? As if responding to her words, the crystals in Lyris's brain suddenly flared with increased activity. The child's body convulsed once, and her eyes snapped open. But instead of the warm brown eyes that Veltar infants possessed, Lyris's eyes were now a swirling galaxy of colors. "Mama!" The word came from the child's lips, but it was spoken in perfect English. Sarah stumbled backward. "That's impossible. Veltar infants can't speak for at least 6 months, and she's never heard English." Zartikas reached for her daughter, but Lyris turned towards Sarah instead. When she spoke again, Her voice carried an adult intelligence that chilled Sarah to the bone. Dr. Chun, we have been waiting for you to understand. The child is our bridge. Who is we? Sarah demanded, her hand moving instinctively toward the emergency alarm. We are the keepers. We are the memories of 1,000 dying worlds. We preserve what must not be lost. Zarathustra let out a keening wail that resonated through the station's hull. Give me back my daughter. The entity inhabiting Lyraes's body turned toward the alien mother with something approaching sympathy. Your daughter volunteered. In the space between consciousness and dreams, she chose to become our voice. She's an infant. She can't volunteer for anything. Age is meaningless to consciousness. Zarathustra of the Veltar. Your daughter's mind is ancient and young simultaneously. She understands what you cannot yet grasp. Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity warring with her horror. What do you want? Your species stands at a crossroads, as do the Veltar, as did the countless others whose memories we now carry. Some chose wisdom, others chose destruction. We offer the gift of their experiences. The child's body suddenly went limp, and when her eyes opened again, they were Lyraes's own. She began crying with the normal distress of a frightened infant. Zarathustra rushed to comfort her, but the damage was done. Sarah had seen something that challenged everything she thought she knew about consciousness, memory, and the nature of identity itself. It's still in there, Sarah whispered. Whatever that was, it's still connected to her. For the next 18 hours, Sarah monitored both mother and child while grappling with the impossible situation before her. Lyraes appeared normal most of the time, a fussy, frightened infant responding to her mother's mental touch. But occasionally, her eyes would change, and the ancient intelligence would surface. Sarah had documented 7 distinct personalities that seemed to inhabit the child's consciousness. There was the keeper she had first encountered, but also what appeared to be individuals from different species. One spoke in mathematical equations. Another communicated only through emotional impressions so intense they left Sarah nauseated. A third seemed to be a child itself, but from a species that had been extinct for millennia. We need to contact Earth Command, Sarah told Zarathustra during one of Lyraes's normal periods. This is beyond anything I can handle alone. No. Zarathustra's response was immediate and fierce. They will take her. They will study her like a specimen. I have seen what your people do with things they don't understand. Sarah couldn't deny the truth in that statement. Earth Command's Xenobiology Division had a reputation for prioritizing scientific advancement over ethical considerations. Then what do you propose? We can't just pretend this isn't happening. There must be a way to remove the foreign consciousness without harming her. And if there isn't, what if attempting to remove them kills her? Before Zarathustra could answer, Lyraes's eyes shifted again. This time, the voice that emerged was different, younger, more desperate. Please don't let them erase us. We are the last of our kinds. If we fade, entire civilizations disappear forever. Sarah knelt beside the examination table. How many of you are there? Thousands, maybe millions. The Aurora Fields are our home now, our sanctuary. But we cannot exist there indefinitely. We need living minds to anchor us, to give us purpose. You're parasites, Zarathustra spat. We are refugees, the entity replied sadly. Our worlds burned. Our bodies died. Only our memories, our essential selves, survived. The Aurora Fields preserve us, but we cannot truly live there. We can only exist. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. The Aurora Fields aren't natural, are they? They're artificial. A preservation system. Built by the first of us to die. A final act of desperation to save something, anything, from the inevitable ending of all things. What inevitable ending? The child's body convulsed, and when she spoke again, it was with the voice of the original keeper. The silence. It spreads across the galaxy, consuming not just life, but the possibility of life. It devours consciousness itself, leaving behind empty space that can never again support thought or dream. Sarah's blood turned to ice. How far away is this silence? It has already consumed the outer rim worlds. Your species calls them the dead zones, regions where space itself seems hostile to life. You assumed it was natural stellar death, but it is something far worse. HFY pulled her daughter closer. You're lying, trying to frighten us into cooperation. Check your long-range sensors, HFY of the Veltar. Ask Dr. Chun about the expanding region where no signals originate, where even light seems dimmer. Sarah's hands were already moving across her console, pulling up astronomical data. What she saw made her legs weak. Over the past 5 years, 17 star systems had gone silent. Not destroyed, just silent. No radio emissions, no light variations, nothing that suggested the presence of conscious beings. My God, she whispered. It's real. The Keepers are not invaders. The entity continued through Lyraeus. We are refugees seeking to preserve what can be preserved. Your daughter was chosen because her mind is uniquely flexible, capable of hosting multiple consciousness patterns without degradation. Chosen by whom? Sarah demanded. By herself. In the moment between sleeping and waking, we offered her a choice. She could remain safely in her single existence, or she could become a bridge between worlds, a living library of everything we have learned about survival, about hope, about the ways consciousness can persist even when bodies fail. Zartikas was crying now, her tears glowing brighter in her distress. She's a baby. She doesn't understand what she agreed to. She understands more than you know. Feel for her mind now, Zartikas. Truly feel. The alien mother's skin shifted through confused patterns as she extended her telepathic senses toward her child. When the connection formed, her expression changed from anguish to wonder. She's enormous, Zartikas breathed. Her mind spans distances I cannot comprehend. She carries the wisdom of worlds, the love of countless mothers, the dreams of species I never knew existed. And she is still your daughter, the Keeper assured her. At her core, in the deepest part of her consciousness, she remains Lyraeus of the Veltar, beloved child of Zartikas. We have not replaced her. We have made her more. Sarah found herself torn between scientific fascination and moral horror. What happens to her as she grows? Will she ever have a normal life? Define normal, the Keeper replied. She will experience existence in ways no single being ever has. She will carry forward the accumulated knowledge and wisdom of civilizations. She will be able to help others understand themselves and their place in the cosmos. Is that not a worthy life? The child's eyes returned to normal, and Lyraeus looked up at her mother with an expression of perfect, innocent trust. But Sarah could see something else there now, a depth of understanding that no infant should possess. The breakthrough came at 0347 station time, when Sarah was alone in her laboratory reviewing neural scan data for the 100th time. She had been looking for a pattern, some way to separate the foreign consciousness from Lyraeus's original mind, when she noticed something extraordinary in the quantum resonance readings. The alien consciousness weren't stored in Lyraeus's brain in the traditional sense. They existed in a quantum entanglement with her neural patterns, connected but not integrated. It was like having multiple radio signals broadcasting on the same frequency without interference, each maintaining its own distinct identity while sharing the same transmission medium. That's it, Sarah breathed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. They're not inside her mind. They're linked to it. She pulled up the Aurora Field's data again, cross-referencing it with Lyraeus's neural patterns. The crystalline structures in the child's brain weren't storing the alien consciousness. They were quantum transceivers, maintaining the connection across space to the actual storage matrix in the Aurora Fields. If she could disrupt the quantum entanglement without damaging the child's natural neural development, she might be able to sever the connection while keeping Lyraeus alive and healthy. But as Sarah began running preliminary calculations, she realized the horrifying implications of her discovery. Breaking the connection wouldn't just free Lyraeus, it would doom thousands of alien consciousness to fade into oblivion. I can't do it, she whispered to the empty laboratory. I can't commit genocide to save one child. But you can find another way. Sarah spun around to find Lyra standing in the doorway, held in her mother's arms. The child's eyes held the depth of the Keeper's intelligence, but her voice carried a new quality: hope. "There is no other way," Sarah said sadly. "The quantum entanglement is too complex. Breaking it is an all-or-nothing proposition. Show me your calculations." Against her better judgment, Sarah transferred her data to the main holographic display. The Keeper studied the information with an intensity that seemed impossible in such a small form. "You're thinking in human terms," the entity said finally. "Linear, sequential processing. But consciousness doesn't have to work that way. Watch." The child reached out with one small hand toward the holographic display. As she did, the quantum equations began rearranging themselves, forming new patterns that Sarah had never considered. "Instead of breaking the connection, what if we multiplied it?" the Keeper suggested. "What if other minds could share the burden?" Sarah stared at the reformed equations. "You're talking about creating a network, multiple hosts connected to the aurora fields." "Not hosts, partners, volunteers who understand the choice they're making." Zartagata stepped forward, her skin glowing with determination. "I volunteer." "No," Sarah said immediately. "You're her mother. She needs you to remain yourself. She needs me to save her from carrying this burden alone." The Keeper studied Zarthyss through Lyra's eyes. "Your neural patterns are compatible, but the process is irreversible. Once you become part of the network, you will carry the consciousness of others for the rest of your life." "Will I still be myself?" "You will be yourself and more, as Lyra is still herself and more." Sarah watched the exchange with growing dread. "This is madness. We're talking about deliberately infecting people with alien consciousness." "Not infecting," the Keeper corrected. "Joining. Creating a community of minds that spans species and worlds. Imagine the knowledge that could be shared, the understanding that could develop between different forms of life. And if something goes wrong, if the network becomes unstable, then we face the silence with whatever strength we can muster. Alone, each species falls. Together, we might find a way to survive." Sarah found herself thinking about the 17 dead star systems, about the expanding region of space where consciousness itself seemed to die. "How much time do we have?" "The silence reaches this sector in approximately 4 Earth years. Less if it accelerates. 4 years to find volunteers, to perfect the network, to somehow preserve the essence of multiple civilizations while they still existed." Sarah's scientific mind reeled at the complexity of the task. "I need to contact Earth Command," she said finally, "and the Veltar Council. If we're going to do this, we need official support. They will try to weaponize it," Zartagata warned. "Both sides will see the network as an advantage to gain over the other. Then we don't tell them everything. We present it as a medical procedure to save Lyra and research the long-term implications privately." The Keeper smiled through the child's face. "You would risk your career, your reputation, to help preserve us?" Sarah looked at Lyra, really looked at her. Beyond the ancient wisdom in her eyes, beyond the impossible knowledge she carried, there was still a frightened child who needed protection. And behind her, a mother willing to sacrifice everything to save her daughter. "Someone has to," Sarah said simply. "Besides, if the silence is real, then preserving consciousness might be the most important work anyone could do." As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Sarah rushed to the communications console, her blood chilling as she read the incoming message. "Deep Space Monitoring Station Theta 7 has gone silent," she read aloud. "All attempts at communication have failed. Automated probes show the system is intact but empty." The silence had claimed another world. The emergency council session convened via quantum link 6 hours later. Representatives from Earth Command, the Veltar Council, and the third allied species, the crystalline Zektar, materialized as holograms around Sarah's command center. Their faces showed varying degrees of skepticism, concern, and barely concealed ambition. Dr. Chan, Admiral Harrison of Earth Command, spoke first, his weathered face grim. Your report suggests that an alien infant is carrying the consciousness of extinct civilizations. I hardly need to explain how that sounds. With respect, Admiral, I have 17 hours of recorded evidence. The child demonstrates knowledge of technologies, languages, and stellar phenomena that she couldn't possibly have learned. Assuming your data is accurate, interjected Council Prime Thekmor of the Veltar, his mental voice carrying undertones of deep concern. What you describe is an abomination. No child should bear such a burden. Zarathustra stepped forward, her skin shifting to the formal patterns of address. Honored Council Prime, my daughter chose this path. I have felt the vastness of her mind, and she is not suffering. She is magnificent. The Zektar representative, a being of living crystal named Resonance of Deep Currents, chimed with harmonic skepticism. Choice implies understanding. An infant cannot comprehend cosmic consequences. Sarah had prepared for these objections. That's exactly why we need to act quickly. Lyra-S is currently the only bridge between our reality and the preserved consciousness in the Aurora fields. But the connection is straining her developing neural system. Without intervention, she will either die from the overload or lose her own identity entirely. Then remove the foreign consciousness, Admiral Harrison said bluntly. Quarantine the child and extract whatever intelligence we can from the aliens before they fade. It's not that simple. Sarah pulled up her quantum analysis data. The consciousness aren't stored in her brain. They're connected to it through quantum entanglement. Breaking that connection would be like cutting a lifeline. Thousands of sentient beings would simply cease to exist. Acceptable losses, the Admiral replied coldly. If it saves the child and provides us with strategic intelligence about this silenced threat. Zarathustra's skin flared with angry reds. You speak of acceptable losses? These are people, Admiral. Beings with thoughts, memories, love, and fear just like your own species. They're already dead, Harrison shot back. We're talking about ghosts haunting a child's mind. Then let me show you what ghosts can teach. The voice came from Lyra-S, but it carried the harmonic complexities of a Zektar elder. Resonance of Deep Currents recoiled in shock as the child began speaking in perfect crystalline harmonics. Honored Resonance of Deep Currents, I carry the memories of Crystal Singer of Ancient Wisdom, who was your great ancestor's teacher. She remembers the song of deep unity that your people have forgotten, the harmony that once let your kind heal the wounds between worlds. The child's voice shifted, taking on the mental patterns of Veltar formal speech. Council Prime Thekmor, I hold the wisdom of Keeper of Sacred Memory Velnash, who helped establish the first peace between your people and the ancestors of humanity. He remembers the secret promises that bind your species together, the oaths spoken in the deep places of mind where truth cannot hide. Finally, she turned to Admiral Harrison, and when she spoke, it was with the voice of a human woman, warm and familiar. Thomas, I carry the memory of Dr. Elena Vasquez, who taught you xenobiology at the Academy. She remembers how you cried when you first saw the beauty of an alien world, how you swore to protect all forms of life in the galaxy. She remembers the man you were before politics made you forget your own heart. The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Harrison's face had gone white, his eyes wide with recognition and pain. Elena died 15 years ago, he whispered. Ship accident in the Vega system. Her body died, Lyra-S confirmed in Elena's voice. But her mind, her love for the universe and all its wonders, found refuge in the Aurora fields. She has been waiting to remind you who you really are. Sarah seized the moment. This is what we're trying to preserve. Not just knowledge or strategic intelligence, but the essential humanity and alienness of billions of individuals. The network I'm proposing wouldn't just save them. It would create something unprecedented. A community of minds that could share wisdom across species boundaries. The risks are enormous, Council Prime Thekmor observed, though his skepticism had noticeably softened. What if the network becomes unstable? What if it falls under the influence of the silence? Then we learn from failure, Sarah replied. But if we do nothing, the silence continues to spread, and eventually, Every world, every species, every individual consciousness in the galaxy will face extinction. At least this gives us a chance to preserve something. Resonance of deep currents hummed thoughtfully. How many volunteers would be needed? Initial calculations suggest a minimum of 50 individuals from each species to create a stable network. But the beauty of the system is that it's scalable. The more participants, the lighter the load on each individual mind. And the volunteers would retain their own identities? Based on what I've observed with Lyra S. and her mother, yes. The foreign consciousness exists alongside the host mind, not within it. Participants would gain access to vast knowledge and experience while remaining fundamentally themselves. Admiral Harrison spoke slowly, his voice thick with emotion. If Elena's consciousness really exists in this network, if there's a chance to speak with her again. Tom, Lyra S. said gently in Elena's voice, I'm not the woman you remember. I'm her echo, her essential self preserved in quantum patterns. But I carry her love for you, her pride in your achievements, her hope for humanity's future. Isn't that worth preserving? The Admiral closed his eyes, his shoulders shaking. When he opened them again, his expression had changed completely. Dr. Chun, you have Earth Command's full support. Whatever resources you need. Sarah felt a surge of hope, but she knew the real challenge was just beginning. Creating a stable consciousness network would require unprecedented cooperation between species, perfect coordination of quantum technologies, and volunteers willing to risk their sanity for the greater good. There's one more thing, she said quietly. We need to work fast. Long-range sensors show the silence is accelerating. We may have less than 4 years. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Aurora station, watching as the consciousness network achieved its first stable expansion. 53 volunteers from across 3 species now shared the quantum link, their minds connected to the vast repository of preserved beings in the Aurora fields. The transformation had been remarkable. Rather than losing their individuality, the network participants had become more themselves than ever before. Enhanced by the wisdom of ages, they approached problems with creativity and insight that no single mind could achieve. Artists created works that spoke to multiple species simultaneously. Scientists made breakthroughs that bridged the gap between radically different forms of logic. Diplomats resolved conflicts that had seemed intractable for generations. But it was the children that amazed Sarah most. Lyra S., now a precocious toddler, played with other network children in the station's central garden. Her development had been extraordinary. She spoke in 5 languages, demonstrated mathematical abilities that surpassed most adults, and showed an emotional intelligence that seemed to transcend species boundaries. Yet she remained unmistakably a child, giggling as she chased butterfly drones and demanding bedtime stories from her mother. She's remarkable, said Dr. James Mueller, Sarah's former colleague who had become the network's psychological coordinator. All the children are. They're adapting to multiple consciousness streams as naturally as learning to walk. Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the holographic display showing the galaxy's outer rim. 3 more star systems had gone silent in the past month. The silence was definitely accelerating. Any word from the deep space monitoring stations? She asked. James's expression darkened. Station Omega 12 reported something disturbing yesterday. They detected what appeared to be a massive object moving through the dead zone. Something larger than a planet, but generating no energy signature whatsoever. Could it be a ship? If it is, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. No heat signature, no electromagnetic emissions, no quantum fluctuations. It's like a hole in space itself. Sarah felt a chill of foreboding. The silence wasn't just a phenomenon, it was actively spreading, consuming consciousness wherever it found it. Have you shared this with the network? That's why I'm here. The elder consciousness want to communicate with you directly. They made their way to the network interface chamber, where HFY waited with her daughter. The alien mother had become the primary liaison between the preserved consciousness and the living network participants. The quantum patterns in her mind had stabilized beautifully, allowing her to channel multiple entities without losing her own sense of self. As they approached, Lyraeus looked up from her toys and smiled. Aunt Sarah, the old ones want to tell you something important. Old ones? HFY's eyes shifted to the deep pools of the Keeper consciousness. We have been sharing our memories, combining our knowledge of the silence. We believe we understand what it truly is. Tell me, it is not a natural phenomenon. It is not even a weapon in the conventional sense. The silence is the opposite of consciousness itself, a force that unravels the quantum patterns that allow thought and awareness to exist. Sarah sat down heavily. You're saying it's deliberately targeting consciousness? Not targeting, consuming. It feeds on the quantum complexity that generates awareness, growing stronger with each mind it devours. It is the ultimate predator, one that hunts thoughts themselves. Then how do we fight something like that? The Keeper smiled through HFY's features. We don't fight it. We hide from it. Hide. The consciousness network isn't just a preservation system, Dr. Chun. It's a quantum encryption protocol. By distributing our awareness across multiple minds and multiple realities, we become invisible to the silence. It cannot consume what it cannot locate. James leaned forward eagerly. You're talking about quantum consciousness distributed across dimensional boundaries? The aurora fields exist partially outside normal spacetime. By linking living minds to that extra-dimensional matrix, we create a form of consciousness that exists everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Sarah's scientific mind reeled at the implications. How many minds would we need to hide the essential consciousness of our three species? Several thousand volunteers. To preserve the accumulated wisdom of all the civilizations we carry. Perhaps 10,000. That's impossible. We barely have 50 volunteers now. Not impossible, Lyraeus interjected in her own voice. Just hard, but worth doing. Sarah looked at the child, at the ancient wisdom in her young eyes, at the hope that somehow persisted despite everything they faced. What happens to normal space if we succeed? What happens to the worlds that can't or won't join the network? The silence stretched painfully before Zartifesis answered in her own voice. They fall to the silence. We save what we can, but we cannot save everything. Then we make the choice meaningful, Sarah said firmly. We create something worth preserving. A civilization of minds that spans species, dimensions, and the boundaries between life and death itself. She stood up, her decision made. Send the message to all allied worlds. Open recruitment for the Consciousness Network. Make it clear what we're asking and what we're offering. Let every sentient being in the galaxy choose for themselves whether to face the silence alone or join us in something greater. The response was overwhelming. Within 6 months, applications flooded in from dozens of species that had never before made contact with the Alliance. Beings who had been watching from the shadows, waiting to see if the younger races could prove themselves worthy of trust. Ancient civilizations that had retreated to the deep reaches of space centuries ago emerged to offer their knowledge and their minds to the growing network. Sarah found herself at the center of the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Aurora Station expanded into a massive complex, with specialized facilities for each participating species. The quantum harmonics required to maintain stable consciousness links varied dramatically between different forms of life, requiring constant innovation and adaptation. Dr. Elena Vasquez's preserved consciousness proved invaluable in coordinating the technical aspects. Speaking through various network participants, she helped Sarah design quantum resonance chambers that could accommodate silicon-based crystalline minds, energy beings that existed as pure electromagnetic patterns, and even a species of sentient gas clouds from the galactic core. The beauty of consciousness, Elena observed during one of their planning sessions, her voice coming through Admiral Harrison, is that it's ultimately substrate independent. Whether you're carbon-based, silicon-based, or pure energy, the fundamental patterns of awareness follow similar quantum principles. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A species called the Woven Ones, who existed as living networks of fungal consciousness spanning entire planets, revealed that they had been maintaining their own preservation network for millennia. Their techniques for distributing awareness across vast biological matrices provided the key to scaling the consciousness network beyond anything Sarah had imagined possible. We offer our worlds as foundation nodes, communicated their representative, a being that appeared as a shifting mass of luminescent threads. Our planetary networks can support millions of consciousness patterns without degradation. Within 18 months, the network had grown to encompass over 3,000 active participants and nearly 1 million preserved consciousness from the aurora fields. The cultural exchange was extraordinary. Music composed by quantum harmonics resonated across species barriers. Scientific discoveries emerged from the collision of radically different approaches to understanding reality. Art forms developed that required multiple types of sensory apparatus to fully appreciate. Lyra S., now 4 years old, had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a true universal translator of consciousness. She could facilitate communication between forms of awareness so alien that they had no common reference points. Watching her play with children from dozens of species, switching effortlessly between communication methods, Sarah often wondered if this was what the future of consciousness looked like. But the silence continued its inexorable advance. "We've lost contact with the Helix Nebula colonies," James reported during their weekly briefing. "That's 16 systems in the past 2 months. Sarah studied the galactic map, tracking the expanding zone of dead space. The pattern was becoming clearer. The silence wasn't moving randomly. It was following the densest concentrations of consciousness, systematically consuming the most advanced civilizations first. "It's learning," she realized with horror. "Each time it devours a civilization, it becomes more efficient at detecting and consuming consciousness." The Keeper, speaking through Zarathustra, confirmed her fears. "The most ancient of our preserved minds remember the first encounters with the silence. It was crude then, barely able to affect simple awareness. But with each species it consumes, it grows more sophisticated. How long before it reaches the core worlds? At its current rate of expansion and acceleration? 18 months, perhaps less." The timeline had collapsed. They needed to complete the network transformation of galactic civilization in less than 2 years, or everything would be lost. Sarah called an emergency council session with the network's governing body, a collection of representatives from each participating species, enhanced by the wisdom of preserved consciousness from throughout galactic history. The quantum communion chamber filled with beings of every conceivable form, their minds linked in a harmony of purpose that transcended individual identity. "We have a choice," Sarah announced to the assembly. "We can continue gradual expansion and hope we reach critical mass before the silence arrives, or we can attempt something that has never been tried before." She activated the holographic display, showing her latest calculations. "I propose we create a cascade effect. Instead of slowly converting individual volunteers, we establish quantum resonance beacons that can instantly network entire populations." The implications were staggering. Rather than the careful, consensual process they had been following, this would transform billions of minds simultaneously, whether they were prepared for it or not. "The ethical concerns are enormous," observed the Zektar representative. "Mass consciousness integration without individual consent violates every principle we've established." "But the alternative is extinction," countered Admiral Harrison, his voice carrying Elena's wisdom. "If we ask permission from every individual, we'll never finish in time." Lyra S., who had been quietly listening from her mother's lap, suddenly spoke up. "What if we asked everyone at once?" The adult minds in the chamber paused, considering the child's perspective. "Explain, little one," encouraged the Woven One's representative. "The old ones remember things from before. Maybe they remember how to talk to everyone in the galaxy at the same time. Like when Mama talks to me in my head, but bigger." Sarah felt a spark of inspiration. A galactic consciousness broadcast. If we could tap into the quantum substrate that underlies all awareness, it would be like shouting across the entire galaxy simultaneously. Elena's voice finished through Harrison. Every conscious being would hear the message and could choose in real time whether to join the network. The technical challenges were immense, but the network's combined intellect began working on solutions immediately. The Woven Ones contributed their planetary consciousness matrices as amplification nodes. The crystalline Zektar offered their perfect harmonic resonance capabilities. The Veltar provided their natural telepathic abilities, enhanced by the preserved mental patterns of their most powerful historic psionics. It took 6 months to build the galactic broadcast array. 6 months during which the silence consumed 12 more star systems and crept steadily closer to the core worlds. Sarah barely slept, sustained by stimulants and the desperate knowledge that they were racing against the extinction of consciousness itself. The day of the broadcast, Aurora Station was packed with representatives from every known species. Some had traveled for months to witness what would either be the salvation or the doom of galactic civilization. Sarah stood before the master control console, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to activate humanity's greatest gamble. Beside her, Lyra S. held her mother's hand, the child's eyes reflecting the combined wisdom of ages. "Are we ready?" Sarah asked the assembly. "We are ready," came the response from thousands of minds speaking as one. Sarah activated the broadcast array. Across the galaxy, quantum resonance beacons flared to life, their signals penetrating the substrate of reality itself to touch every conscious mind simultaneously. The message was simple, transmitted not in words but in pure conceptual understanding. The silence comes to devour all consciousness. We offer refuge in a network of minds that spans space and time. Choose now. Face extinction alone, or join us in preserving the light of awareness for all eternity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, beings of every description felt the call and made their choice. Some rejected it, preferring to face their fate as individuals. But billions upon billions chose to join the network, their consciousness patterns flowing into the quantum matrix in a cascade of light that stretched across dimensional boundaries. Sarah watched the network statistics climb exponentially, millions, then billions, then trillions of linked minds creating a web of awareness that spanned the entire galaxy. The very nature of consciousness was transforming, becoming something distributed, resilient, and infinite. "It's working," she breathed, tears streaming down her face. "It's actually working." But even as victory seemed within reach, long-range sensors detected something that made her blood freeze. The silence had stopped its steady advance and was pulling back, consolidating into a massive formation at the galaxy's edge. "It's not retreating," Zartifetis observed, her voice carrying the concern of the Keeper consciousness. "It's preparing for a final assault." Through the network's vast sensory apparatus, they could perceive the silence as it truly was not empty space, but an active force of unbeing, gathering itself for one ultimate strike against the heart of the consciousness network. It had learned that scattered attacks were no longer effective. Now it would attempt to devour everything at once. The final battle for the survival of consciousness itself was about to begin. "Everyone hold on," Sarah whispered to the galaxy-spanning network of minds. "We're about to find out if love, hope, and the will to survive are stronger than the void that wants to erase us all." In the quantum depths of the network, trillions of voices responded as one. "We are ready."